my next guest is one of the meanest, nastiest, low-down wrestlers in the WWF. These days, he's not getting along with Jake the Snake Roberts, and I got a little clip for you to take a look at here to prove that.
Jake makes a move. He just saves Damien in the nick of time. Well, isn't this a change of pace? Jake saving Damien. Damien's on it back. Give it to him, Jake. Give it to him. Oh, look. Bad News is trapped. Bad News runs for cover. Bad News is running for cover.
Can we cut this part out right here? Bad News Brown.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you? I drove down here in my car, right? What is this? What the hell is this?
We'll talk about it. Let's talk about it. You come out here starting stuff already.
Hey, look, man, let me tell you something.
Why don't you have a
You
seat
know,
first,
I drove down here from Harlem to this cesspool you call L.A.
Wait.
This place reminds me of granola,
You drove from Harlem?
That's
you
right.
worse than I am.
That's right. I drove
man.
from Harlem. You know, this place reminds me of granola. It's full of fruits, nuts, and flakes. And then I go back there, and what happened? What is this? You call this food?
Well,
Man, that ain't food.
that's vegetables, man.
Man, that ain't food. That's
Vegetables are
rabbit
good
stuff.
for you, man.
I don't want to hear nothing. Let me tell you something. I was
Why
looking
don't you
for
have a
some
seat, man?
chitlins, some hog maws, some pig's feet, black-eyed peas, rice, you know what I mean? Soul food, but you seem to have forgotten. You out here with all these locals.
Let me explain something to you, man.
Oh, man, get out of here. Don't
It's
stop
not
it.
that I forgot.
And another thing, I saw
can I
that
say
tape.
something? Could I speak?
No, you can't speak. I saw that tape. Where'd you get that clip from? Jack Tunney sent it to you, didn't he?
Well,
The president of the WWF. This
don't matter where
man
it came
has
from.
done everything under the sun since I came to the World Wrestling Federation to embarrass me. Now he sends you that bogus clip. He didn't show you exactly what happened, did he? When I left the ring, I had to go on a little errand because I was double parked, you understand? I was double parked. That's right. They told me, they said, hey, bad news. You may get a ticket, go move your car. Then they didn't show you what happened when I came back, did they?
have a seat, man. Sit down.
I don't know if I want to sit down,
They
man.
got chairs in Harlem, my brother.
Of
Sit
course
down.
they got chairs.
I'm a comedian, man. I don't mean no harm.
This is the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, presented by HAMIN Media and the Pro Wrasslin Reflection, where we discuss the very best of the best in pro wrestling history.
And what you gonna do when Hulkamania and the largest arms in the world run wild on you?
The two soundest wrestlers in the World Wrestling Federation, maybe in the history of the World Wrestling Federation, are right here, right now. Mr. Perfect and the excellence of execution, the Hitman.
WrestleMania weekend isn't complete without the Heartbreak Kid, and he is on his way.
He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family.
They think they got the answers. I change the question.
You will rest in peace.
Get used to it in Ric Flair. Who you're looking at, the man.
This man! What the
Pick it up!
On stage 29, Reflection Nights. What is going on there to the Vetoites, the dispensary HAMIN Nights, and the probationary solitary confinement PWCites? What is going on to the Magnificent Seven, the Elite Eight, the Naughty Nine, the Terrific 10? You know who you are, and welcome, welcome to the PWR podcast here at the HAMIN Media Group at PWR.com. We took a little bit of a week reprieve and stuff like that, but you know what? Give or take, certain life situations happen within the PWR family, so I'm not going to go into any more details. I let those people say what they have to say for themselves. But you know what? Our thoughts and prayers to the PWR family. You know who you are. We always ride or die with you. So you know what? When you are down, I'm down. But when you need me, the professor's got your back. The prodigal one's got your back. TW's got your back. The executive producer extraordinaire, he's got your back. We are a family. That's what it is. We got your back. So that's all it is. I'm going to say it like that. So with that being said, I got to introduce myself because I ain't pain like that. I got to introduce... What's going on, man? What is going on? I hear noise. Somebody is fucking in another room right now. I'm hearing bed springs and shit like that. But neither here nor there. I got to do the intros because, again, I got to get the grays on my chin. I got to get the grays on my pubes and all that stuff. I am the charismatic one. I am the studious one. I am the effervescent one. But most importantly, I am the glorious one. The only objective man in this IWC, YWC, and solitary confinement PWC punditry. The only objective man in this political hemisphere. The only objective man in this Twitter universe or X universe, whatever the hell you want to call it. The only objective man on this, on this Skype call, on the podcast streams, and all that shit in between. The one and only Professor Chabelle Cruz. And I'm not here alone, no. While TW is on assignment in Detroit Rock City, I still got my man. He is the Tony Montana of HVAC systems in the South Florida region. He is your friend of mine, the prodigal one himself, JB. What is going on, my friend?
What's going on, Professor? What's going on, Reflectionites? Let me start out by saying, Professor, I have sinned against you. I have sinned against the wrestling world. I am no longer worthy to be called the prodigal one. Maybe I'll earn that title at the end of this, but I have to start this podcast by forgiving you, sir. You told us what the topic was going to be this week, and I'm going to be very honest with you. I was a little salty. I thought it was a stupid idea. But as I was watching this, I got so much nostalgia and so many memories started coming back. And that's what this show is all about. So again, please forgive me, for I have sinned against the professor. And I humbly ask that by the end of this podcast, you find it in your heart and your soul to forgive the prodigal one.
I am a man that forgives all. I have forgiven TW on numerous occasions in this 8-year friendship that we've done with this recording. I have forgiven the executive producer extraordinaire. I have forgiven our Donnie Day One himself for binging here and binging there and still not catching up to 2020 Cinco. I have forgiven every reflection out there. I have forgiven the PWSL family. I can forgive you, JB. So don't worry about it. The professor is all knowing, but also all forgiving. I got a loving heart. But sometimes that loving heart, you don't play with my heart. Don't play with my emotions and all that stuff. But anyway, I'm going to keep it fair. I'm going to keep it humble. And I've already started with forgiving you, so you don't have to worry about it, JB. You're the prodigal one, JB himself. But anyway, we are going to get into this special spotlight. And JB, there is a little bit of a nuance to this spotlight. There is a little bit of a caveat to the spotlight. Most importantly, there is an agenda to the spotlight because we here at the PWR podcast here at the HAMIN Media Group at PWR.com is starting a mission. We are starting a campaign for Triple H, for Nick Khan, for Stephanie McMahon, for that silent partner Vince McMahon, for the education department's Linda McMahon, and all points in between to do the right thing for 2026 Hall of Fame. We want the man, the myth, the legend, Arsenio Hall himself to be inducted into the celebrity wing of the WWE Hall of Fame for 2026. There is a reason why we're doing this, JB, and I just want to let that out there right now because it is a travesty. It is an injustice that this man, Arsenio Hall, is not inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. And we will get into it why he should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. But you know what? Before I let my diatribe out and I will vent out my frustrations with the WWE for this particular reason. You actually said it, JB, about the nostalgia. I don't want you to get into it, but do you agree with the professor that Arsenio Hall should be inducted into the WWE celebrity wing of the Hall of Fame?
100,000,000%. And I will go right now on record and I will say, outside of Cyndi Lauper and Mike Tyson, there has been no celebrity that has done as much for that organization than Arsenio Hall. And the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame is unbelievable. Not only that, and please, Professor, because you're the all-known, so correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm correct, I don't believe I ever remember seeing Arsenio Hall part of any WWF programming. And I don't want to hear about when they did their show, the rest of the tag match on his show. I'm talking about on real W. I've seen Regis. We saw Cyndi Lauper. We saw Tyson. We saw Alex Trebek. We saw fucking Ray Combs from Family Feud. We saw so many people. I don't remember ever seeing Arsenio on WWF television.
If he was on WWF television, it was maybe Nostalgia Raw. And don't quote me on that, JB. He might have. The one thing we know about Arsenio Hall Reflection and JB, this one I'm 100% sure. He went to the LA Sports Arena WWF shows in Los Angeles.
Yes.
That was proof positive. I don't know if he is still, but he was a big fan of the WWF and all that stuff. He used this Celebrity Reflection Nights to create this partnership and this, you could say, this business friendship, a business relationship between himself and his late night talk show from 1989 to 1994 between himself and Vincent Kennedy McMahon. So JB, before we get into this, I just want to say this, and then, you get your spiel in here too, because again, we know what Vince McMahon wanted to do. He wanted to go mainstream, wanted to go crossover, but there was a problem with that because again, you can only use Hulk Hogan for so many vehicles in the talk show syndicate. You even said the names itself. You said Regis and Kathy Lee. Johnny Carson was still a thing. You had Late Night with David Letterman. Again, you don't want to oversaturate Hulk Hogan, but you got this little syndicated show. You got those little networks of syndication in the New York, Bombay area. I think it was Channel 9. So it was called UPN and all that stuff. So they took a chance on Arsenio Hall, who had a late night talk show on Fox 5, and they canceled him. They canceled Untapped Potential. He could have been the king of late night on Fox 5, but Fox 5, they fucked it up. What Fox's fuck up was UPN 9's gold mine for the next 5 years, and he was legitimately, Reflection Nights, the king of late night television. And one of the reasons he was the king of late night television, to a certain degree, JB, he was young, he was hungry, he caught that urban metrics, he got the people of color, he got the young 18 to 34-year-old demographic, he got the young kids to stay up late at night, 11 p.m. or 11:30 p.m. at night, every day, Monday through Friday for that 5 years. It was electric. It was hip. It was new. It was what the kids said back in the 80s, JB, if you remember this. It was fresh and all that stuff. So, JB, what say you about the merger, the partnership, if you will, between Vince McMahon and Arsenio Hall?
No, I mean, no one can ever question during these times Vince's mind. Vince was everything he touched was gold, and all of his ideas were 99% of it was great. And this is another good idea. And what you're saying is 100% correct. I can talk about myself. I grew up in Queens, New York. I'm a minority. I don't fucking relate to David Letterman or Johnny Carson, but for Arsenio, I related. He was more, like you said, he was fresh. He was for more that younger crowd, and with the hip hop and the things that he was doing was more like he was for the young generation. And the fact that he started bringing on wrestlers, that even made it even better. I used to watch Arsenio all the time, and for anyone who doesn't think Arsenio is a star, they're nuts. Go watch Coming to America. For me, Arsenio was always a star. And just watching back these clips, the guy is legitimate funny. Now, I haven't seen Arsenio stuff recently, so I don't know what he's about now. But in regards to this merger, I think it was great. It was great for WWE that they got their publicity, and not only that, but and we'll get into it. The one thing I loved about Arsenio was it wasn't just Hogan all the time. We got to see different lights of, like, how many talk shows can you say Bad News Brown was on? You know, I know Rick Rude was on one episode of Regis, but when else are you going to see an interview with Akeem and Big Boss Man on a talk show? So I like that we saw a wide variety of wrestlers during that time. And I know we'll get into it, but I absolutely loved it. And Arsenio, you could tell he was a genuine wrestling fan. So you love to see it.
Absolutely, I agree with that sentiment 100%, JB, and all that. And let me just say this about Arsenio Hall, because we have to at least acknowledge it on the wrestling scale. He got it. He understood the business of wrestling. And for that brief time period, in 1989 to 1994, he kept it, what is that called? Kayfabe. He let the wrestlers be still in character. He did not disrespect them. He never asked any of the wrestlers that he had on his show the question, is it real or is it fake, and all this stuff. He never did that. He went with the protocol. He promoted the show. He promoted the event that was coming up, and he kept its storyline and all that stuff. So we'll get, like JB said, we will get into that. But before we even get into that, JB, you agree with that sentiment? When you saw the stylistics of the interviews of the wide varieties back in the late 80s and early 90s with Arsenio Hall in the WWE?
1,000,000%, because again, outside of Arsenio Hall, Regis on the Kathleen and Regis show, and Ray Combs on the old school Family Feud, before Steve Harvey and stuff. Those are the only three guys that ever kept it kayfabe. Every other show you see previous to that they were ever on, whether it's a talk show or it's an interview, they made the interview person made a mockery out of wrestling. Like, well, oh, is it fake? Oh, it's not real, is it? Arsenio kept it kayfabe the whole time, and he never took any pot shots. And he made jokes, but it was more as like a comedian. And there's nothing against the business. Is more about the guy's character, just like any wrestling fan would, making fun of the guy. The only thing he did that was a little bit, maybe I wouldn't say he went beyond the lines, because it was the biggest topic back then, is asking about the steroid stuff, and that's because Hogan wanted to come back on. Oh, we'll get to all that.
Yeah, but we'll get to that. That was the one. That was the only one. Yeah, that was the only one that was kind of real. That was real life, that he broke the fourth wall, JB. I agree with that 100%.
Right, and that's only because Hogan requested to come on the show to talk about that, but he never did anything to hurt the business, and he was always keeping it kayfabe. He was always promoting the shows and stuff, so he is the exact person. If I'm Vince McMahon, I want my guys to go on that show, not to go on a show where they're going to just talk shit about it and ask if it's fake and all this stuff. Arsenio Hall was the right guy for the job.
He was the right guy. It was the right time, and it was the right vehicle and all that stuff. And again, Vince McMahon knew that he had to take the WWE or WWF, whatever you want to call it, JB, to the next level of mainstream. And Arsenio was the perfect vehicle for all that. And you know what? We can't forget one of the perfect lines of Arsenio Hall in his movie times. And you talk about Coming to America. There's so many lines, but you got to remember the one great line that he said. You realize I have not had sex since I came to America. That's still one of the greatest lines ever in movie history, with Arsenio Hall as Semi, Prince Akeem's loyal servant and all that stuff. So let's get into this Spotlight Edition, JB. Let's get into the Spotlight Edition Reflection Nights with Arsenio Hall and the late night wrestling connection from 1989 to 1994. And before we even talk about some of these interviews, JB, there is a little bit of a fun fact that if you did not know this, but by 1994, JB, he did an interview with a WCW wrestler. Do you know? Oh, you got it right there. You hit the
I've never seen it, though. I've never seen it.
But you knew that he did interview a WCW guy. So, it wasn't all just WWE. He was trying to be fair on both levels. But again, with the circumstances beyond everything, I will get into that a little bit later on to the show Reflections. But we had to at least acknowledge that Sting did appear on the Arsenio Hall show between the time of 1989 and 1994. So, JB, the floor is yours with this, because one of the great things about Arsenio Hall and his presentation, like you said, being a young kid from Queens, New York, me being a young kid from Queens, New York, a person of color as you and I are, with the hip hop connection, again, the young urban demographic connection that you and I both shared on this platform, even the crowd, what was the crowd called? The Dog Pound. His band was more hip than Johnny Carson's old, decrepit 80-year-old saxophone players and all that stuff. So, JB, what say you about the environment that when you saw it on TV? How excited were you staying up till 11 or 11:30 at night?
It was more again up my alley as a younger guy, because you watch Carson or Letterman or any of those guys. The show starts and it's a very mellow tempo, and it's very kind of calm and some slight applause. And then you go to Arsenio and it's loud and the music's going and everyone's freaking cheering and doing that fist pound. And, the crowd is hyped, for the younger generation. So it was a totally night and day. It's like Arsenio and whoever sat down and planned the show, they were like, we're going to look at everything Carson and Letterman do and do the exact opposite of what they do in every case, every scenario. And it worked, because without getting into a divide and whatever, I don't think for like minorities and like, let's call it the urban life, we didn't have a talk show, a late night show for us. Really. I'm not trying to be divisive here, but that was kind of us, where you talk about hip hop and things like that. More of like a urban trend. You didn't really have that. So, I was a big fan of Arsenio growing up.
I don't think it's divisive. It's just the truth. It's just our historical truth. And that was the fact. Again, it's nothing against Johnny Carson. Again, he was the gold standard for Hollywood and celebrity. If you want to get fucked in the ass and you got on Carson, you was already a made person and all that stuff. Arsenio wasn't offering your ass wasn't offered. You got an opportunity. Just like Vince McMahon always said about WWE, he offered opportunity. And the one thing I want to say, JB, about Arsenio Hall here, because again, what he did, we said it, he kept the kayfabe, but you saw the difference between the good guy wrestler and the bad guy wrestler. So JB, the floor is yours. Whichever way you want to go with the good, what say you about his interview stylings with the good guy and a bad guy? You could give the examples and all that stuff. The floor is yours. What caught your eye?
Yeah, it was. From Arsenio's case, when he interviewed the good guys, he was cordial with the good guys. Then when he wrestled the bad guys, like a typical fan, he was like taking shots, like with $1 Million Man and Bad News Brown and etc. But I don't know if you're gonna ask this later, or should I say what my favorite one is right now?
It's up to you. You want to go for it.
My favorite interview is 100%, and it was a mix between this guy and one of Macho Man's interviews, because Macho Man, I think overall Macho Man had the best interviews, and I think I'll say this: I believe Macho Man represented the company 1,000,000 times better than Hogan. And let's take out that steroid interview, forget that.
Yeah, but we'll talk about that later, JB,
forget about that. Mm-hmm. Even the regular interviews Hogan did, Macho Man was a way better representation, I believe. And what the crazy thing is, one of those interviews, he was a bad guy, because one of those interviews was right around WrestleMania 5. But Macho Man did the interview more of like a face. He's making jokes and stuff like that. But I enjoyed Macho Man in all of them. Whereas Hogan, I thought Hogan didn't come across genuine. Like, I remember him asking Macho Man about using the steroids. And Macho Man, yes, I did use anabolic steroids, when it was legal, but you shouldn't do that. It's bad for you. And it gave me PMS, and he made a joke out of it. Hogan, like, again, it was disingenuous. Hogan came out during Desert Storm. I'm assuming this is right before WrestleMania 7. And he's like, oh, I got the Desert Storm gear on. No, you don't, bro. I've never been in the military, but I'm smart enough to know during Desert Storm, they're wearing brown outfits. You're in the middle of the fucking desert. If you're wearing camouflage green, you're going to be seen. But I just thought about that.
That's the analogy for the start of the Hogan Lies. He was wearing the wrong gear for the.
That was a thing? Like, they made that a thing?
that's the start of the Hogan lies. Everything.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing. I just noticed today because when I'm watching, I never saw that interview when you're in the camouflage. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? This is Desert Storm. You're not. And I even Googled it just to be on the safe side. Like, I don't want to sound dumb, but for Desert Storm, I'm sure they wear brown because I've seen a bunch of movies with Desert Storm.
But JB, you know Hogan lies. You've heard all the Hogan lies, everything. He lied on Arsenio Hall. But again, we'll get into that a little bit later with all that stuff. For me, JB, I'll say this.
Let me just say one last thing.
Go ahead.
The person I was talking about, because I didn't get out who my favorite was 100% Bad News Brown. Because Arsenio almost cracked him a couple of times, getting him to break character. You saw like Bad News wanted to laugh a couple of times. But you saw a side of Bad News Brown. He was still like the badass and whatever, but he was making jokes like, "Oh, how come you don't got chitlet and pig feet?" You know, Bad News Brown would never cut a promo like that. So I love seeing that. Absolute favorite one.
I can't argue with that, but again, I would say this because I just want to harp on the interview stylings Reflection, because like JB alluded to it, because there was a difference, it was night and day between the good guy wrestler and the bad guy wrestler. And the most entertaining Arsenio Hall interviews with WWE wrestlers are the heels, because he's got more, let's say, he got more zings to put on the bad guys. And one of the most infamous ones is the Twin Towers, Akeem, Big Boss Man, and the Dr. Style Slick Reflection. What makes that so infamous is that Arsenio Hall starts with Akeem because he cannot believe that this white man who's originally from Chicago, Illinois, is from the deepest, darkest jungles of Africa. And you can see Arsenio's face. You can hear the laughter from the dog pound because he's looking at Akeem like, what is this cracker doing in this African garb, trying to play a wigger and all that stuff? It is the funniest thing, and he's calling him out on us. He's calling out the Dr. Style Slick. But then he kind of tried to play it cool with Big Boss Man because he knows the Big Boss Man was going to get him. And the great thing, JB, if you remember, with all the heels, if it was Bad News Brown, if it was the Twin Towers, if it was, I think, Zeus too, you know, they got off to get into Arsenio's face, and Arsenio was quick-witted and quick enough to get away from him. And he ran away and all that stuff. It was pure comedy gold. What say you, TW? I'm about to say TW. I'm sorry about that. That's my fault. Forgive me, JB. I called you TW.
That's like them calling Akeem from Africa.
Yeah. So, you know, the funny thing about the Twin Towers, JB, if you want to harp on this too, is like, you know, it is a little bit stereotypical for even United States for a United States audience to not even think that a person of the color of Akeem, you know, a white person, could be African. We learn later because we're young. You know, I'm 1980. I'm 12 years old. I forget how old you are, JB. You're 6, 7?
When back at this time?
Yeah.
This is like what, 89?
Yeah, 89.
I'm 6.
You're 6 years old. So, you know, we're young and all that stuff. But one of the young things that we've learned, you know, I'll say this for myself at 12 years old. Like, if you heard the deepest, darkest jungles of Africa and you see a white guy acting black, you already know it's funny. But also in your mind, it's like, it's not true. There ain't no white people in Africa. But then when you're older, you read some books and all that stuff, and we learn that Elon Musk
is like all white people.
Right. And you learn, like, from Elon Musk and all that stuff, there are white people in Africa, Reflectionites. So, you know, that's why we grow, we get wisdom and all that stuff. I just wanted to say that we all learn. We're learning. I'm 47, going to be 48 in a couple of weeks, Reflectionites. I'm still learning as I go before I die and all that stuff. So, JP, what say you about the Twin Towers interview? Because, again, for me, that's one of my favorites because, again, all 4 of them were dynamic. The interview was great. And, of course, Dr. Style Slick, he had the quick whips, too, you know. How did you, when what was it? When Arsenio asked him, how did you get the name Dr. Style Slick? And Slick was just laid back, cool, calm, and collected and all that stuff. And for the video Reflectionites, my photo, if JB see this, I got Rick Rude. I don't know. Rick Rude's been the theme of the PWR podcast, but Rick Rude has Arsenio Hall on his ass cheeks. But anyway, neither here nor there. But Dr. Style Slick was laid back, slick back, and all that stuff. He's like, when my girl was in my bed and all that stuff, She just called me the Dr. Style, and I just ran with it and all that stuff. Just like the pimp that Slick is. So what say you, JB, about the Twin Towers interview?
I thought it was a great interview. I was really watching Big Boss Man. I know I should be diving this hard, but I was really watching Big Boss because I was curious because I felt like Slick was the star of that interview. He was coming to all the quick wits. Akeem barely said any words, and Big Boss Man talked a little bit, but I was just watching at Big Boss Man to see if he was getting a little bit pissed off that the interview was more geared towards, I feel, Slick. Slick did most of the talking and stuff like that. So, but Big Boss Man didn't look pissed off or anything like that. The other thing I found really interesting was Big Boss Man called called Arsenio boy a couple times, and as some people may assume, if a white man calls a black man boy, it's like a racial thing. So I was wondering if the crowd would react to that, but it didn't seem like anyone gave a fuck. This is probably back in the time when no one gave a fuck about stuff like that. But I thought the interview.
I think we have to be a little bit like clear with this because it's not like I hate that term. Like no one gave a fuck back in the 80s or no one gave a fuck back in the glory days, right, JB? It's like
people gave a fuck. They're more lenient.
There was leniency, but you had to watch your tone. That's what it was. I think we have to be brutally honest because I hate when people say back in the day, and it's not a dig at you,
sure.
Baby. It's like when people say like back in our day, there was no racism back in our day. Yes, there was.
Yeah, there was racism.
There was always racism, and there was people taking pot shots. There were people being prejudiced and all that stuff. So even what Akeem said, it was funny. And we knew the context of it, but it was an easy way to get away with it because you knew they were all in on the joke. That's the way I looked at it. That's
but with Boss Man, it's because Boss Man is like, he's from down south. He's from Cobb County, Georgia. Mm-hmm. He has a freaking Confederate flag on his sleeve. That's back when he was wearing it because I looked for it and he had it there. And he's calling Arsenio boy. But again, like Arsenio, is not gonna have a problem with it because he's part of the whole gimmick. But no one had to think, but overall, in terms of the interview, it was one of the like you said, all the heel interviews are solid. The $1 Million Man, Rick Rude, Bad News Brown, even the Macho Man heel one, they were all solid episodes. Sherry and Zeus, they were all good, man.
Oh, and speaking of sensational Queen Sherry, JB, we have to at least go into this because Sherry got
she wanted that stick.
Right, she wanted the Black Snake Moon reflection ice and all that stuff. So Arsenio was blushing because Sherry was like flirting with him and all that stuff. And of course, you had the dog pound going woo and all that stuff. So that was a moment where Arsenio let his guard down. He felt safe. But then when my man Tiny Lister came out, aka Zeus, the human wrecking machine, everything changed, and Arsenio had to keep his wits up and all that stuff. He had to keep his guard up, of course. Again, it is what it is with that. So,
I have a question for you, Professor.
Shoot.
So nowadays, right? And I understand. I get times are different now. I get that 100%. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, 99%, you see a wrestler doing an interview. There's pretty much no kayfabe. Kayfabe is dead. Obviously, in all these interviews, kayfabe was like at 99.9%. Do you think that Arsenio wanted it that way? Or do you think it was the wrestler's decision? Or you think Vince told these guys, hey, make sure you stay in kayfabe?
I think in the 80s and into the early 90s, to answer that question, I think all the wrestlers were in agreement to keep it kayfabe.
Got it.
I think the credit of where people, the realness of the wrestler that came out actually wasn't in America, JB. It was actually in Canada. It was in the mid-90s, if I remember correctly. It was after the Montreal Screwjob. That talk show, I think it was called Off the Record or Off the Script.
Yes,
Canada.
I've seen a lot of those episodes.
All the wrestlers of the WWE and all the wrestlers from WCW went to that show. And that interviewer, I think, I know his name starts with Michael. I know his name was Michael something.
I forget his name.
It escaped.
But that guy was a dick.
Well, if TW was here, he would have Googled it. But anyway, neither here nor there. I don't even remember the name. But it was Michael something. But he allowed the Wrestlers Reflectionites to be real. He could call them by their wrestler names, but sometimes he even slipped and called them by their government names and their real names and all this stuff. You saw the realness of Bret Hart talking about the backstage politics of the Montreal Screwjob. You saw
Michael Landsberg.
There you go. Michael Landsberg and Off the Record and all that stuff. You saw the realism of Hulk Hogan taking pot shots at Mick Foley, JB. And he was in while Hogan was in WCW and Mick Foley was in WWE, so they took pot shots at each other. You heard Stone Cold Steve Austin talk about Eric Bischoff when he was under contract with WWE. All that shit.
Taking pot shots at Vince. Vince was on the show one time. I remember you saw that episode.
Bischoff and Vince took pot shots at each other and all that stuff. So, but what I'm trying to say is, from that show and that platform and that landscape, and of course, we can't the evolution of the internet, JB. We cannot deny that. The evolution of the dirt sheets, the evolution of the hotlines. We got to get more info behind the scenes, and you and I, as wrestling fans, were more elated about the backstage going-ons and all that stuff. So the wrestlers adapted to the situation. Michael Landsberg was a great vehicle. And then in the 2000s, you got to see less kayfabe and more realism because that's what they wanted. When it was Jay Leno, when it was Jimmy Fallon, when it was Stephen Colbert and David Letterman and all that stuff, Regis and Kelly and all that stuff, they wanted the wrestlers to be more realistic and all that stuff. So, but Michael Landsberg, I'm not going to say he's the godfather of JB, but he's one of the pioneers that actually let the wrestlers be themselves. But Arsenio, the mission statement was clear. Keep it kayfabe, but get WWE into the mainstream and crossover. That's what I say. So what say you, JB, about all that? Or you want to add something more to that?
No, you said it best. I believe Arsenio was kayfabe, and yeah, you're right. The first time I remember more of a little bit of realism to it was that Michael Landsberg from Off the Record, 100%.
Mm-hmm. And let's not forget, JB, that you don't have to talk about this, but you even alluded to this before we even recorded that Arsenio even did a reboot of his show. So I don't want you to talk about the interviews per se, but did you see a difference between what we celebrated in the 80s and early 90s to the reboot that I think he did in 2016 or 2017? Was there a difference? Was it funnier? Was it more laid back, more even keeled? What say you?
You're talking about the show in general, or regarding interviewing wrestling guys?
Just interviewing the wrestling guys in his reboot attempt.
I could be 100% wrong, but unless you're an idiot, there's no way you can watch these 89 and 90 episodes and not realize this guy's a gigantic fan. Mm-hmm. The later stuff, I don't necessarily know if he was watching from a week to week, like a hardcore fan. It didn't feel that way. I could be wrong, of course, but I felt his fandom here in these 89 and 90 episodes for sure.
Let's talk about that for a second, and then we'll get back into our campaign of getting Arsenio Hall into the WWE Celebrity Wing Hall of Fame for 2026 and all that stuff. But JB, I want you to expound on that for a second, because again, not for Arsenio, we can't speak for Arsenio because again, we don't know if he stopped watching weekly and all that stuff. Just like yourself, JB, you stopped watching it. You had your golden era, and then you just stopped. Mm-hmm. I almost stopped, but I didn't stop. I guess I'm that hardcore fan. I never really stop, but I take breaks here and there because sometimes a Raw is not that important to me. Sometimes a SmackDown is not that important to me, but a pay-per-view, I'll still watch the pay-per-view and all that stuff. Dynamite's not that important to me. I can miss it, or I'll just catch YouTube.
What the fuck is Dynamite?
Don't go there. You don't.
Does not exist in my world, brother.
You sound like TW right now. But anyway, neither here nor there. But you get where I'm going with that. You can, for the hardcore fan of today, you can miss some of the things because YouTube's available, TikTok's available, and all that stuff. So you can catch the clip that you want to see, and you don't have to be that hardcore fan. So what you said about Arsenio in the reboot stage, probably he'll just watch a YouTube clip, and he'll just he'll have some clip notes and know it's Steve Austin and know it's the Bella Twins, and probably have notes about their biography coming into it and all that stuff. So what say, JB? Because again, you as the jaded fan, you stopped. So maybe Arsenio kind of stopped it. Did you felt it like that way, or you felt it in a different way?
So what you're saying, I feel like, he had the cliff notes, but you could see again in the 89 and 90 episodes the geek in him. He's cheesing, he sees these guys, he's smiling the whole time, and he's just really into it, versus just interviewing any old person. He's interviewing Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's interviewing the divas, etc. It's like, okay, he's just going through. I could be wrong, but I felt like he was just going through the motion. Versus, again, these 89 and 90 episodes where he's like geeking out. He's smiling the whole time, and he's laughing, and he's getting up and jumping around, and he's very animated. Versus, I mean, again, the later years, he's also an older guy, but I don't think that's it. I just think his fandom was at its highest during the 89 and 90 episodes. That's just my thinking, at least. Again, I could be wrong, but that's what I'm thinking.
I don't think you're wrong. It's a great observation. I just think, again, every wrestling fan goes through those motions, JB. That's what I just wanted to say. He can still be a wrestling fan, but again, he probably just wants to keep it simple. I'll watch the pay-per-views. I just won't watch every week. I won't geek out every week and all that stuff. So, you know, some wrestling fans are like, it's boring watching it every week. It's like, oh God, they're not doing the booking that I want to do. That's why you have to take a break and watch that stuff. So Arsenio, like you said, Arseno is like JB Reflectionites. He had his golden era and then he stopped. It's very common.
What year was WrestleMania 25? Do you remember?
It should have been 2008.
Okay, so from 2002 to 2008, I was not watching wrestling. But to your point, during that era, I would still go on online and read not dirt sheets, but read the results and like a summary of what it wasn't Bleacher Report, but things like Bleacher Report. They'll give you a summary of the matches and still kind of see what's going on. But I wasn't watching anything. And then in 2008. My friend invited me to WrestleMania 20. He was having a thing at his house, WrestleMania 25. And I saw the Undertaker HBK match, and I fell in love with wrestling again. I started watching it again, and this is at 2008. And what year was it that John Cena did the surgery on his elbow where Daniel Bryan beat him for the title at SummerSlam? Was that 17?
2013.
What?
Yeah, 2013.
2013. Now, are you sure?
Trust the professor, as I tell TW.
Bro, that's wrong.
SummerSlam 2013. That's where he beat John Cena for the belt with that injured elbow.
But was it WrestleMania 30? Was it WrestleMania 30 2014?
Yep.
But I thought that's the first time he won the title.
No, he won the title a bunch of times.
Fuck. Okay, so anyway, I started watching from 2008 up until I think about 2017. And then I stopped watching around 2017, 2018. And then I literally just started watching again. Like, I'm talking about religiously, like, watch Raw and SmackDown every week. Literally, like, a couple months ago. When Raw went on Netflix, actually.
There's ebbs and flows of your fandom, JB. That's the point right there. And probably Arsenio has the same thing. He catches the clip notes. He catches the results, maybe just watches WrestleMania because that's the only thing for any, let's say, WWE fan. I'll just watch WrestleMania. I'll just watch Royal Rumble. That's probably the only two.
That's what I used to watch Royal Rumble, WrestleMania.
Yeah, that's it. That's people's fandom as far as it is. The two biggest pay-per-views of the year, that's what you want to watch, and that's probably the most fun you'll ever have. So with that being said, let's go back to the glory days, JB, of the Arsenio Hall interviews. And I just want to, again, with my picture, if there is a reason, you got to look at Arsenio with Ravishing Rick Rude and Bobby the Brain Heenan. Again, this is
I want to ask you one thing before you continue, and I want you to be honest with me.
This is comedy. Go ahead. What's the question?
Would Professor, be honest with me, Professor, be honest with the Reflectionites, would you ever wear a pair of tights like that in public?
As long as my face is on my back, is on the tights.
No, what if it was Arsenio's?
No. I ain't wearing no dudes unless I'm gonna fight him or beat the shit out of him. That's psychological warfare.
What if it was TW?
No, I'm not having TW's face anywhere near my ass or my dick. You know how Rick Rude was wearing these spandex shits with the tassels and all that stuff. No, the hell no. And
I'm sure the Reflectionites wanted to know that.
They do, but I'm always transparent with the Reflectionites. Hell no. But, you know, I'll wear like the Bella Twins on my ass cheeks. You know, I'll have Brie on the back and Nikki on the front and all that stuff. So that helps. Or Charlotte or Becky, whatever the case may be. Mercedes, Sasha Monet and all that stuff. I'll wear that. That's where the tie-dye and that's where, you know, the paint.
Jordan Gray, Jax.
I do Jordan Grays. Don't bother me. Everybody got a fetish. Everybody got a fetish. Muscles are a good fetish. But anyway, neither here nor there, Reflectionites. Let's get back into this. You can see the face of laughter in Arsenio seeing his face on Rick Rude's ass cheeks. And of course, it's comedy gold between Rick Rude and Bobby the Brain Heenan, TW. And of course, Rick Rude was giving Arsenio Hall some advice on dating women and all that stuff. So it was a very, engaging interview, because this one of the interviews with the heels, JB, is he wasn't afraid of Rick Rude. He wasn't afraid of Bobby the Brain Heenan. He kind of never stepped back. Like you said, he took his pot shots. And I think this was before SummerSlam 90, so they were promoting that pay-per-view and all that stuff. So, of course, he's going to Arsenio took his digs of talk about the Warrior and all that stuff, but he didn't run away like he did with Zeus. He didn't run away with like Boss Man. So what say about Rick Rude and Bobby the Brain Heenan? Because, again, all three of them got it. And all three of them, again, of course, with Bobby the Brain Heenan, it's always about comedic timing. And Rick Rude has his zingers and all that stuff. What say you about Rick Rude, Bobby Heenan, and Arsenio?
So I know TW loves when I say this, but to be fair, Rick Rude never really charged at Arsenio. So there was not really any reason for him to jump back or anything. But I will say this, of all the guests he had, if there's legitimately someone that could kick his ass, it's Rick Rude, because everyone knows Rick Rude was like a badass. But he never charged at him. I found it funny though that Bobby Heenan, and I don't know if this was on purpose or not, but Bobby Heenan got Rick Rude to break quite a few times. He said some shit, and Rick Rude just started laughing. And I was like, I don't think he was supposed to do that. But it was a good exchange. And Rick Rude, I felt was his interview. He was in character, but he wasn't as aggressive as some of the other heels. I actually liked it. I don't know if I was glad to see this kind of interview where someone's not just yelling and going crazy the whole time. It was just a normal interview. Not that there's anything wrong with the other interviews, but it got me to thinking I would have loved to see an interview between him and Jake. I don't believe they ever did one. And if they did, I never saw it. But I would have loved to see a normal. You know how Jake is very soft spoken and very cerebral, and he's quick witted. It would have been interesting to see how that would have went. But in regards to this, it was great. Bobby Heenan got his. We all know Bobby Heenan is a comedic character. He got his pot shots in. Arsenio asked him about being a weasel, so I enjoyed the interview.
I think, JB, we have to at least acknowledge this, because again, for Arsenio, he has to get the best out of every celebrity interview. Yeah. He has to get the best out of every wrestler interview. So, for an Akeem and maybe a Big Boss Man, he sees that maybe they won't have those comedic timing overtones. You know what I mean? So the best thing he could do is try to get them to, be the monsters that they are and kind of charge them, because again, that's a quick laughter for the dog pound and stuff like that. Same thing with Bad News Brown. Again, maybe in his mind is if I can see if the interview is not going the way I want it to go, I can ad-lib. And Arsenio's a genius with this reflection.
Bro, he says some funny shit, man.
He says the funny shit. And again,
there's no chairs in Harlem. When Bad News Brown didn't want to sit down.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. Arsenio is a great ad-libber, but again, he's hoping that these wrestlers can ad-lib on their own too. So, some people get it, some people didn't, and all that stuff. So before anything, JB, we have to at least acknowledge that during this nostalgic time period that you love between 89 and 94, one interview was actually the realest interview, and we have to at least put a little bit of a bow on this. And again, and that was, I believe, 1991 or late 1991 or early 1992. And that was that interview that Arsenio had with Hulk Hogan. And again, this was the realest interview out of all the interviews, because it wasn't really promoting anything, because Hulk Hogan wanted to set the record straight.
Promoting Hulk Hogan not using steroids.
Right. It was Hulk Hogan setting the record straight, reflection as all that stuff. But again, just like I said earlier in the show, Hulk Hogan started to lie a lot. So, again, we just learned this. When we get older, it's hindsight for us, JB. But this is when we're getting into when we are in our kingdom, if you will, Reflection Nights. We don't know this. We're trying to hear what he has to say and all that stuff. But he was trying to set the record straight with the steroids and all that stuff. And then in hindsight, you hear all these kayfabe interviews like Vince McMahon was pissed off at what Hogan said and all that stuff. And JB, if you want to expound on this, because again, I think this was the first time as a fan, I heard the name Terry. I never remembered hearing Terry and all that stuff, except in the movies, you heard Terry Hulk Hogan. I think maybe No Holds Barred they introduced him as Terry Hulk Hogan, or they kept their Hulk Hogan, or if it was the next movie after
I think
that.
it was Hulk Hogan, if I'm not mistaken, at No Holds Barred.
I think it was. Then if it wasn't No Holds Barred, it was the second movie where he was Terry Hulk Hogan. So that was the first time you can.
What was the second movie? Suburban Commando.
It could have been Suburban Commando, if I'm not mistaken. But you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah. Also, TW. I'm sorry, TW. Professor, it was July of 1991.
Okay, but it was peeling the curtain back just a little bit. You got to hear Terry as his name and all that stuff. And then again, he was trying to be as truthful as possible. Again, there was no charges. There was no court date just yet. I think he was trying to get ahead of this and all that stuff. So JB, if you want to expound on this interview again, this was the realest interview out of all the interviews that Arsenio did in the Golden Age. But again, Hogan did no service for WWE. He did no service for himself too, because again, as we got older, we looked at Hulk Hogan differently and all that stuff. So let's say about this real interview with Hulk Hogan and Arsenio.
Just remind me, this is the one where he's wearing the white shirt, the white T-shirt, and is that the interview you're talking about?
The plain white T-shirt and I think the blue bandana, and that was it. He kept it simple.
This is but on that one I believe he had a yellow bandana. I could be wrong, but basically this is where he's saying like he used steroids like 3 times back in the day, but he hasn't used it ever since and all that shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean the interview's a total bullshit, and he's like, oh, when I was 10 I was huge and like I got this way by working out and I only used it 3 times and it was like when I tore a muscle and all this bullshit. He asked Macho Man the same question, and Macho Man was like, "Yeah, I use steroids, but I don't use it anymore." And the thing with Hulk Hogan was like, "Oh, other wrestlers are using it," and like Hulk Hogan started this whole shit. It was just a terrible interview, and I know Hulk Hogan got a lot of shit. Like ultimately, this is what ended his first run. Like like you want to get really crazy, like we do what ifs. On PWR, like if Hulk Hogan doesn't do that interview on Arsenio, I don't know. Like, do we ever get Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels as world champs and like the little guy as world champs, or would it have always been a big thing? Because if that Hulk Hogan thing doesn't happen, I don't think the whole steroid thing happens. Maybe, and till this day, maybe we have the big guys, the big steroid freaks still running the organization. I don't know. I don't know, but it was definitely a big thing.
Well, we have to remember because again, in the 90s, the tabloid shows like Inside Edition and all that stuff, when the Current Affair was going balls deep. I don't want to use that term because TW, he'd be like drooling right now. But they went balls deep against the WWE with the steroid scandal and the sex scandal. We can't forget that. So I understand the what if, but again, those two things.
Well, was that when Inside Edition was doing that shit? Was that before or after the Arsenio interview?
It was before, during, and after, because they kept harping on all the scandals. I mean, it was back to back. It was either the Ring Boy scandal or the steroid scandal. So they were reporting on both.
To know who started that. How did that whole steroid thing start, and who broke who started like kind of broke the story first? I'm curious to know that.
Well, the FBI was going after the doctor from Pennsylvania first.
The Horian.
I forgot his name, but they got him. And then he didn't want to spend a whole bunch of years in jail, so he was trying to rat out the WWE and to saying that Vince was the trafficker of all the, he was the Tony Montana, he was the the Al Pacino and all that stuff of the drug game of the steroid game for sports. So, and again, that was the early 90s was just a bad time for WWE PR wise. Again, when you had the sex scandal with the Ring Boys, and then you had this back and forth and all that stuff, and then you had one of the guy who was a commentator who got fired because he wouldn't suck Pat Patterson's dick. Reflection. I kid you not. That's still one of those. That's part of this. So again, Vince McMahon could not PR his ass off and try to sway the crowd, because again, it is what it is. But going back to the Arsenio Hall show and all that stuff again. JB, you said it earlier. Again, there's a different vibe with Arsenio Hall. There's a different vibe with Johnny Carson. There's a different vibe with David Letterman. And I'll be a little bit fair here. David Letterman was for the young demographic, again, in comparison to Johnny Carson. But you and I did not really connect with David Letterman to a degree. We connected with Arsenio Hall, just like you eloquently said. But the vibe with, let's just use Arsenio Hall and the Ultimate Warrior, because that was a great example of an interview that went way left, that even Arsenio did everything in his power to make it funny and make it good, but the Ultimate Warrior was in his own world. And this is one of those, this was a good guy, but even Arsenio Hall in his mind is like this. What the hell is this motherfucker doing? I'm trying to help you.
Hands down, the worst fucking interview ever.
You agree with that?
That's number one.
Go ahead.
And number two, number one, not only was it the worst interview ever, but God rest Ultimate Warrior's soul, but bro, his hair was like stuck on his chin the whole time. Fucking move that shit. The whole interview. I don't know if you know
you are besmirching TW's favorite wrestler. You know this, right? You are besmirching the honor of Ultimate Warrior.
TW's favorite wrestler is Lex Luger.
No, but Ultimate Warrior is a good.
He said Lex Luger. He said, listen, TW's Fickley. He said Lex Luger. He said Ultimate Warrior. He said Bret Hart. So I don't know really who it is, but I will say this. Ultimate Warrior had his hair stuck on his chin the entire interview, which was fucking weird. Not to mention, he was just saying the most random shit, and which is typical Ultimate Warrior. And you know what I started thinking about? Because Ultimate Warrior is going left field, my brain started going left field. Is Ultimate Warrior meant to be a Native American?
I have no idea. But he's from part of
because Arsenio asked about his war paint, and then he started talking about his war paint, and he's like, "Oh, it's to reach out to like my warriors," and like I started getting like an American Indian vibe, and I'm like, "Wait, have I missed this all these years?" And he's supposed to be like a Native American.
You saw this interview, and this is what Arsenio Hall was trying to do. Like, oh my god, what the fuck are you talking about? Just keep it to the match. Keep it to the WrestleMania 6. You know, if you can't find anything to say, I'll try to help you out and all that stuff. It was like Arsenio was like, oh my god,
he's like flipping over the sofa and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was totally uncharacteristic because the first thing he did was lay down on the sofa, and I was like, "What are you doing, bro?"
It was weird and all that stuff. Reflection. I
also thought it was interesting he didn't come out with the IC title.
I don't think nobody besides Macho Man was the only. I think Macho Man was the only one that came out with the title. Not even Hogan came out with the title.
But I don't think Hogan was champ at any of those times.
During the steroid thing, he was.
But that was a whole different tone.
No, but he could have brought the belt out, but he chose not to.
True.
It is what it is. But Macho Man was the only one that wore the belt. And speaking of the Macho Man reflection, at least I want to harp on that one because again.
Great.
That was a great example of what Vince McMahon was hoping for. Again, you couldn't use Hogan. You didn't want to oversaturate JB. You know what I mean? You don't want to overexpose Hulk Hogan to all the interviews. So he was hoping that somebody would carry that torch and carry that mantle. And Macho Man was the perfect number 2. And of course, in the hierarchy and the pillars of WWE, Macho Man was right behind Hulk Hogan and all that stuff. It was him. It was Hogan. It was, the Warrior was the fixture in the pillar and stuff like that. But Macho Man got it. Vince McMahon knew when they had a great relationship at that time, he could say, Macho, go on Arsenio, knock it out of the park. And every interview that Macho Man did, he knocked it out of the park. I think the first one that I remember in the clip I was watching, he was sitting next to, I think, Morgan Fairchild. And
by the way, she's smoking hot, but continue.
No, you absolutely. That's what I was trying to do. He was flirting with Morgan Fairchild, but he was letting her in on the game, if you know what I mean. So it's JB. Out of all the interviews, what was the best Macho Man interview? I thought it was with Morgan Fairchild, but maybe you had a different take on which Macho Man interview was the best one to you.
They were all really good. I think that was the funniest one because. And what was crazy about that one is in the right before WrestleMania 5, so he's a heel, but he's acting like a total baby face and he's making jokes, and I was like chuckling the whole interview. All of his interviews are good, but going back to his last interview, which I believe would have been around July or August of '92, it's right before SummerSlam '92 at Wembley Stadium. Sorry, when he's like, "Oh, to all the kids out there, stay in school, don't do drugs." I'm thinking like Vince probably like, why couldn't Hogan have done this? Like, this is exactly what you're looking for. Like, just keep the story. Like, I just thought that Macho Man did an awesome job. But then I started also thinking about just now as you're talking. If you think about it, and I know Arsenio said this on a couple different episodes, he loves heels. If you think about it, like Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, he didn't have any other baby faces on the show. It was all heels.
Mm-hmm.
So Arsenio did love the heels. I know he had Honky Tonk Man on, and he had a couple other guys on, but going back to Macho Man, I think Macho Man was on. Also, Macho Man's probably been on Arsenio more than anybody else. Maybe Hogan, maybe I don't know between him and Hogan, but Macho Man has been on the show a lot, so you could tell that Arsenio was a big Macho Man fan. But every time Macho Man came on the show, he did not disappoint at all. Hogan was on as Suburban Commando. I thought that was a shit interview. When he came on acting like fucking Desert Storm wearing green camouflage, I didn't think that was a great interview. The steroid thing was not a great interview. All of Macho Man's interviews were all solid. Like, we got Macho Man's character. It was funny, entertaining, and I enjoyed all of them.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to point out before, there's nothing really left to really talk about Reflection. That's because, again, it'd be a 5-hour show. We don't want to go interview by interview because, again, there was so many great interviews that Arsenio did that, me and JB would bore you to death and all that stuff. I don't know we would bore you, but again, it'd be a 5-hour show. I don't want to bore the Reflection and all that. 90 Day One is trying to binge his ass off to catch up to getting into this episode. So I don't want to do that to 90 Day One. But JB, let's not forget.
Oh, by the way, shout out to Donnie Day One. I posted a question on social media about what was everyone's favorite Arsenio, and his favorite Arsenio was actually the Ultimate Warrior episode, believe it or not.
Hey, everybody has their own subjective taste. So, you and I did not like the Ultimate Warrior, but we had our reasons. But before we even close out, JB, we have to at least acknowledge that during this nostalgic run, there was actually a match on the Arsenio Hall show. Did you know that? Do you know who that match was?
Was it LOD and Nasty Boys?
Damn, you're 2 for 2 on the quiz. You're good. I think if I asked TW, he would have to Google it and then give me the right answer. But that was actually right. I think it was a little bit before SummerSlam 91 or before Survivor Series 91 that there was a tag team match between LOD and the Nasty Boys. I'm gonna give you a bonus quiz. Who was let's say
Steak.
There you go. I was gonna ask you who was Arsenio's color analyst, and you got it. You knocked it out of the park and all that stuff. JB's 3 for 3. You said to forgive you. I already forgive you. You gave me 3.
I'm winning back the love.
I'm giving you all the love that you want. So JB, take it home with this match. What say you about LOD and Nasty Boys again? The ambiance, the dog pound, and all that stuff.
Again, it just goes to show how big of a fan Arsenio was. As many guests Regis had on his show, we never had a match on the set. We never had a match on Family Feud. Arsenio was willing to have a match on his show. Just goes to show the match was whatever. The whole thing was whatever. It wasn't. It wasn't like a Dave Meltzer 5-star classic or anything. It's not in the Tokyo Dome or anything. But it is what it was. But I just goes to show again, Arsenio Hall, the type of dude he was. And that's why he should be not in the 2025 Hall of Fame. He should be in the 2026 Hall of Fame. I believe the 2025 Hall of Fame, Cyndi Lauper should be in the Hall of Fame. She needs to be in the Hall of Fame, and she's not. But that's another story.
No, I'm saying this is the show. This is the starting point, JB. We are campaigning for the 2026 Celebrity Wing, and it has to be Arsenio Hall. So with that being said, let's put a bow on this. I'll go first, and then JB, you will close out. Okay. So I think again, you and I agree that this is this is the golden era of late night talk shows because again, there'll never be an Arsenio Hall again. And even he tried, but again, times are different right now. So with that being said, Arsenio Hall got it. I have to emphasize this Reflection as he got it. He understood the mission statement. He understood what he was trying to do, not only what he was trying to do for himself, but what he was trying to do for the WWE and get them to the mainstream crossover, kid-friendly, family-friendly, and all that stuff. Because again, he wanted it, Vince McMahon wanted to get away from the beer swilling dudes with the cigars and all that stuff. He wanted to have the 8-year-olds and all that stuff. So it was the right man, the right time, the right network, if you will, UPN and all that stuff. And Arsenio, quick-witted, ad-lib, added the comic overtones and all that stuff. He made the Twin Towers funny. He made Bad News Brown funny. He made the match with LOD and Nasty Boys entertaining with Jake the Snake as his color commentator. And, of course, when he had to be serious, he got serious with Akeem to a degree, but he was more serious with Hulk Hogan and all that stuff. So, JB, let's put a bow on it so we can get out of here.
No, man, again, Arsenio has done a lot for WWE, for wrestling. And, like, I know we joked around about it, but the dude deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame, again, for what his contribution is for the business at a time where, you know, WWE was like on a rocket ship ready to take off. He accentuated that. A lot of time during this time, a lot of people looking at wrestling as it was a joke, and he put it on mainstream. He was a popular show, and he had a lot of stars go on there, and it only helped the business, only helped the product. So I definitely think he needs his just due. And yeah, we're definitely campaigning 2026 Arsenio Hall of Fame. It's probably not going to happen, but we hope it happens.
We hope it happens. It's going to happen. If we manifest it, it will happen for next year, because I'm tagging WWE. I'm tagging Triple H. I'm tagging this on my Twitter and all that stuff. So, JB, with that being said,
tag Arsenio too.
And I'll tag Arsenio too. But, JB, we're out of here. And next week, or in 2 weeks, God willing, depending on the scheduling and all that stuff, it's time to get JB's creative juices flowing again, because we are going to do a what if. It's going to be actually a tricky what if, JB, because are you up to the task? Because, again, one of the things that TW has always said on the PWR podcast, he's always given a name of a person who never got to be the world heavyweight champion. And one of those names that was always
Coco Beware. Kidding.
No, not Coco Beware, but I know where you're going with this. But one of the names TW always said consistently was Scott Hall, the man who should have been the world heavyweight champion. But I'm going to add a little twist to it. What if Razor Ramon and Scott Hall became the world heavyweight champion? So, JB, I want your creative juices flowing, because I want you to book the right scenario for Razor Ramon to become the WWF heavyweight champion. And I know you didn't watch WCW, but I want you to create a great scenario for when Scott Hall can become the WCW heavyweight champion. Are you up to that task?
I am. One question, though. When you say Scott Hall, you're talking about the NWO run, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, guess what, Professor? You'll be proud of me, because I don't know if I told you guys this, but I've been binging WCW. And do you know what episode I started with?
What episode?
The episode where Scott Hall shows up. And I've been watching every Nitro and every pay-per-view since. I just got done with like the second episode after Halloween Havoc 96 when Piper showed up. So I'm with you. I'm up for the challenge.
All right. Like I said, the next week or two, give or take, Reflection Nights, don't quote me on this, but the next episode will be a what if. What if Scott Hall and Razor Ramon became the world heavyweight champion in their respective organizations? JB's up to the task. I'm up to the task. I got to hit TW with the task. But JB, give out your social media and where you're going to be, where you're going to be performing, and where your HVAC, you're selling your HVACs.
I can be reached on Twitter or X. I keep saying Twitter, but fuck it. I can reach on X at the P1JB. That's at the P1JB. And of course, I can be reached on Facebook. I can be found on the PW Hustle Facebook group and also the HAMIN Media Group Facebook group. And I don't got anything else like all these young kids. I don't have Snapchat. I don't have this. I don't have that. I don't have Grindr like TW and Professor. And yeah, man, I'm just out here in Florida slinging HVACs like Tony Montana.
And TW is not here to do the social media stuff, so I'll do it the best that I can. So follow TW at the Tommy Wonder on his X. I'm not doing his all his social media. So the Tommy Wonder on X or Twitter. Follow the executive producer extraordinaire at Big Ray Hernandez. Follow me on my Xer at PWSO PRF. That's PWSO Prof. And if this gets uploaded by that slow ass motherfucker 8-track round, this will be on the PWSO YouTube network. But if you don't want to wait that long, you can subscribe to my channel at The Professor. I'm not monetizing anything YouTube. I just want to share the content and share the laughter and share the nostalgia. So subscribe to the Dumb Professor at my YouTube channel and enjoy the video version of the PWR podcast at the HAMIN Media Group at podbean.com. With that being said, I'm the Professor Chabelle Cruz, and that's my man. He earned the name, the moniker, the prodigal one himself, JB. We're saying good night, and we'll see you next time here at the PWR podcast at the HAMIN Media Group at podbean.com. Peace.